Every summer along the side of Valdez Glacier, there's a lake that forms because the glacier basically blocks all of the water coming off the hill and fills up this huge area. It's an incredible thing because all of these massive icebergs float off the side of the glacier, and then one day the entire glacier drains out in a phenomenon called yokaluk.
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 Yep, probably still not going to get it. I love exploring Alaska by helicopter. Helicopters are incredible tools that allow you to go places and get to places that there's no way you could get to any other way. Or maybe at the very least, it would take you days of really rugged hiking through the mountains. But in this case, I don't even know if you could get there without a helicopter just because of where it's located. So I have a friend in Valdez who has a helicopter, and a few weeks ago, she sent me a message saying, hey, the lake has started draining out. If you want to see this, you need to get down here now. I threw everything in my car and headed out to drive down to Valdez, a short 300-ish mile drive from where I live. Now the drive to Valdez is an incredibly beautiful drive. You drive through the mountains, you drive through this canyon that's filled with waterfalls on the left and the right. It's insanely beautiful. Valdez is one of the most beautiful places on the planet because not only is this little town surrounded by mountains and glaciers almost everywhere, but it also sits on the ocean, which is this really beautiful color blue because of the glaciers that surround it. While I love exploring Alaska in helicopters, helicopters and small aircraft all have one thing in common. You don't have very much space and you really are limited on how much weight you can take.
Juno Radio, November 907, Victor Sierra 122.2, Valdez.
4907 Victor Sierra, Juno Radio.
Valdez traffic, 907 Victor Sierra is picking up at the terminal. Be taking off 24 with a right turn out.
And that's where the Crane M3s came in really handy. Because the gimbal is so small and lightweight, it added almost no weight to us, but it's also small enough and light enough that I can have it inside the cockpit of the helicopter and film while we're flying. As we came around the corner and the now empty lake came into view, it's really difficult to describe and put into words how vast and how big some of these things are. And until you see something that you know, like the helicopter in the space, it's really difficult to understand how big the scale of this place is. Getting out of the helicopter and standing there amongst these giant pillars of ice is something that's really awe-inspiring. I love documenting my exploration adventures in Alaska with great tools like the Crane M3s or the Mavic 3 or my Sony cameras. But I think the top and best thing for me is the fact that I get to experience these things with great friends who enjoy them just as much as I do. Now this video is sponsored by Zhiyun. They sent me the Crane M3s and told me to go make something cool with it. But they don't get any input into this video and they don't get to see it before it's launched. While this isn't a review video, I do want to talk about some of the things that the Crane M3s really did incredibly well on this trip. Now you probably noticed some vibrations when I was holding it out the car window. I was driving 60 something, maybe 65 miles an hour with this camera, the A1, and this lens, the 16-35, outside in the wind, no protection at all. So the fact that this gimbal could handle that at all with this larger camera on it is pretty impressive. Yeah, there were some vibrations, but honestly, I'm surprised that it could handle it at all. But I think the thing that stood out to me the most is how well this thing handled being in small aircraft, because you constantly have G-force pushing one way or pushing the other, and you can see here where it kept the horizon really level, at least for a while we were diving around in a helicopter. It really is incredible. Now eventually the IMU in the gimbal does start to get confused about which way is up and which way is down, because we're moving around so much and there's so many different forces at play in the helicopter. But it does handle it really extremely well. And even holding it outside the helicopter up to about 70 miles an hour, the gimbal was able to keep itself tracking on the subject material that I wanted to keep it tracked on. And I know I said this before, but the fact that this little gimbal can handle my full-size A1 and this 16-35 and a bunch of other lenses I tested really makes it great for work like this, because I really am extremely limited on how much weight I can take in helicopters or small aircraft a lot of times. Now, while I ran with a wire control cable most of the time because I like being able to use the control wheel to adjust the aperture, the cool thing that they included this time in this particular model is Bluetooth control. So you can wirelessly connect your gimbal to your camera and start and stop recording without having to plug anything else in. That's really nice, especially if you're running through environments where you maybe don't want any water getting into the side ports of the camera, but it's a really nice handy feature. I didn't use it on this trip, but I do like the fact that this gimbal has a light built in, because it's really bright, it's bicolor, and it gives you just a lot of options if you need a little extra light, which comes in handy more often than you might think. Besides the battery life, which is really long on this thing and it recharges fast via power delivery, I mean, I basically ran around the whole entire day with this thing on and used it the entire day without having to worry about batteries at all. But the little OLED screen on the back really came in handy when I was adjusting things on the fly, because we were moving quickly, and it made it super easy to adjust motor strength or deadband or sensitivity or anything like that. It just makes it nice not having to have my phone out with an app open to try and adjust things on the gimbal. I've been a big fan of Zhiyun gimbals since they released the Weeble Lab 4 or 5 years ago. I really like how they weren't afraid to step away from the traditional gimbal design or look at other features that they could add into the gimbals that would make it more useful. In this case, the M3s is a really solid upgrade from the M3, and what I think is probably the best gimbal you could get for traveling or for running around the mountains, in airplanes, helicopters, anything like that. But you're going to want to watch this video here next. I'll see you over there. As always, if you have questions, you can ask me in the comments below, or you can join my live stream, which happens most Wednesday nights from 4 p.m. Alaska time or 8 p.m. Eastern, at least if I'm not out running through the mountains, jumping in and out of helicopters, things like that. I'll see you again soon in the next video. Cheers.